everyone, Emily Schmidt here, your Director of Liturgy and Music, and I'm really excited for this month's Stories of Faith here at St. Francis, our new video series that will highlight parishioners and their journey before and to and during their time here at St. Francis of Assisi Parish, as a way to just get to know each other as parishioners, especially during the pandemic, but even moving beyond. So today I'm really excited. I have Ray and Katie Champlin with me today, who are going to share their story of faith. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, excited.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's always wonderful when someone comes and talks to us, because you just never know what you're going to get. So thank you for taking the time and sharing your story with us. So first of all, can you just introduce yourselves and who you are, and tell us a little bit about yourselves and your family?
All right, so let's see, we met back when we were 20 through a mutual friend at St. Ambrose University, and just kind of hit it off right away. And he was a soccer player and I like soccer, and so we hit it off right away and started having conversations and dated for a long time before we got married. And so we dated and lived in southern Iowa for a while after graduation, and ended up getting married in 2009.
Okay.
We got married at Sacred Heart Parish
In West Des Moines.
in West Des
Okay.
Moines, which was my parish that I grew up in. And then we lived down in southern Iowa for a while, and then we relocated after a year or so of marriage, relocated back to the Des Moines area. And that's just a little bit about us. Right now we have 2 children, Caleb and Isabel, and
Wonderful.
they are both students over at St. Francis School. And so that's a little bit about us. Anything else you can think of?
Yeah, well, me specifically, I grew up in Southeast Iowa, and was raised Missouri Synod Lutheran.
Okay.
So, and kind of had a hit and miss, I guess, relationship with our church. You know, probably the holiday masses more so than anything, right? And kind of always veered back and forth between points in our lives where it was Christ was present and then Christ was non-existent. So, yeah, I think that's probably the only other thing I'll add to that. But we've lived here for 12 years, I guess, in the West Des Moines area.
Wonderful.
And love our church. So
Love it.
Yeah.
So you grew up Missouri Synod, but you are at St. Ambrose, where you met at the college in Davenport, correct?
Yep.
So were you Catholic when you, did you become
No.
Catholic in college? Or tell us about your journey of faith during that time.
Yeah, so it's funny because I was actually attending. So Kate went to St. Ambrose, but I actually went to the largest Lutheran school in the country up in Milwaukee.
Okay.
And so what's funny, we kind of joke about how we found love at a Catholic school. And I'm a Lutheran, and I can't find love at the Lutheran school, so had to go to St. Ambrose to make a connection. But yeah, so I guess I didn't actually become Catholic until, was it 2 years ago now?
Okay.
So we had a moment where we were at our dinner table, and our son was in kindergarten at the time. I guess it was almost 3 years now, and he came to us with a question, and it was at this point I realized that he was asking Mom for all the questions. Here we were trying to raise our family with faith in its life and present, and here's Dad in the corner just watching everything while everything's going by him. So kind of had that moment because of my son. It's like, wait, I gotta quit being stubborn, and I gotta figure out how to be better, and started that process with becoming Catholic, going through RCIA, and then I guess we took it quite a bit further, right? So
We just jumped in the deep, or Ray jumped in the deep end. It's just, as a cradle Catholic, it's just always been a huge part of my life. And I went to Catholic school from kindergarten up through finishing my undergraduate, and so it was always there for me. I was always involved in retreat experiences in high school at Dowling, and then retreat experiences in college at St. Ambrose. And when I graduated from St. Ambrose and I moved, he was living in Mount Pleasant in southeast Iowa, and then I moved down to Centerville, which is way down in southern Iowa, and I joined the Catholic Church down there, and I started teaching. Somebody asks for help, and so I just jump in, and I think that's God telling me that I need to jump in and do what I need to do. And I started teaching Sunday school, and started teaching religious ed down there as well, and so it just always was a really big part of my life. And we engaged in conversations about faith while we were dating, because that was still a really big part of our life. But I never felt that it was my job to pressure him to become Catholic in order to get married. I felt that was a decision that he needed to come to on his own.
Yeah.
And when, before we got married and after we were married, even though Ray was Lutheran, he would come to church with me, because there wasn't, I'm speaking for you,
No.
speaking for you, so, but there really wasn't a church home that he found within the faith that he was raised in. And so, I always invited him to come to church with me. I never told him he had to come to church, but I said, you can come with me. And we would go to church when we'd come back to Des Moines. We'd go to church with my parents at Sacred Heart, and it just started to fit, and we just started to have conversations about what the Catholic Church believes, and he shared more about what the Lutheran Church believed, and we started to have those critical conversations that led us down that path where Ray was able to make that decision in his own time and in his own way, which was, I think, as a Catholic that grew up Catholic, that was really important to me. And I knew that was important to him, as I wanted him to make that decision.
Absolutely.
Well, I started realizing, as I went back through and looked through my journey, that the Holy Spirit was guiding me throughout this whole time. And there's so many points in my life where I look at, even before I was born, my grandma was a Catholic school teacher. My mom was raised Catholic, so even before I even out of the gates, that was already a part of my life in some capacity. There's connections to going to fish fries on Friday in a small town, right? Like I said, Kate and I meeting at St. Ambrose, to ultimately coming to the point where the kids are at school here. All these little points throughout my life, I can look back and I can see. Maybe I didn't realize at the time, but I could see the Holy Spirit guiding me, or just kind of whispering in my ear, think about this. Where's your path going? And then ultimately, like I said, led to that one night at the dinner table. So
it sounds like there were seeds planted, like just little seeds waiting for the right time to be nurtured and to grow within you. So now there I see your journey kind of into that. Now let's say you're knocking at the door, or you're at Becoming Catholic. Tell us a little bit more about your journey through the Becoming Catholic program at St. Francis, and how that developed, and then ultimately led to you joining the church.
Yeah. It was great. I got a chance to really, as Kate said earlier, we'd have conversations about where we were with our faith, and but it was never, I didn't know how to expand on it. I think the RCIA process taught me that there's multiple ways to pray, there's multiple venues in order to show your faith, and then at the same time understand it. The educational process for the RCIA things, whether it's the volunteers that help out with the presentations on the Thursday nights, or even just going down to serving food at the shelter, right? You have so many different avenues where you can kind of step out of your comfort zone and just listen and observe. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I learned through RCIA is that, you got to keep your ears open because there's messages everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. So Charlie was my RCIA sponsor, and I mentioned earlier about how Holy Spirit kind of reached out to me in so many weird ways that I didn't see at the time. But him and I met just for a brief moment at a parent party through this St. Francis school, and then hadn't seen each other for a while and didn't really even have any contact after that. But then, as luck would have it, after I decided to become Catholic and make that commitment, I was on a Boy Scout camp out, and so was Charlie. And he came over to me. We kind of had hey, we met before, right? Moment. And he shared with me that he had received an email asking to be a sponsor for someone for RCIA. And he said he was on the fence about it. He wasn't sure, but he was kind of looking for signs. And then he shared with me that I was the person he was supposed to sponsor. He said, "There's no greater sign than this. We haven't seen each other since that first encounter, and here we are on a camp out helping the scouts. So that brought us together and really kind of strengthened our bond as
awesome.
That relationship grew. And then after RCIA was over, and I went on my next path. I signed up for Christ Community Parish.
Okay.
And I was on the fence about it. I wasn't sure I was quite comfortable or ready for it. Kate had been very supportive, and I think they were short on some guys for that weekend. And I said, okay, you know what? I actually went and met with Charlie. I said, hey, what's your opinion? Do you think I can do something like this? I know you've done it in the past. He was quiet as can be, didn't share a word about the upcoming weekend. And I came home, talked to you, and I decided to sign up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as luck would have it, he then became the spiritual director for that upcoming weekend.
Wow.
So again, just these points in our lives where the Holy Spirit's reaching out to us. I'm actually getting goosebumps just thinking about it again. Listening to it, right? And then, and Charlie and I have had a great relationship. Maintained a real solid friendship since then, and it just seems like him and I keep getting paired for whatever reason, and it's been, I firmly believe it's the Holy Spirit guiding us together. Very very cool. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So another great RCIA experience. So.
Okay. So you said you grew up Missouri Synod, and I grew up in Southwest Iowa with Missouri Synod churches, and I would go with my friends, and we often refer to it as the Catholic light.
Yeah.
Very similar. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, what were the similarities and what were the differences coming from Missouri Synod into the Catholic faith?
Sure. So I think there was a lot of similarities in the tradition within the church.
Okay.
The way that the masses are structured, the way that just that comfort level, that familiarity that comes through going to every service, and but I think there's the differences were probably more noticeable to me. Just from little things like pastor versus father, right?
Right.
Just small little tweaks and terminologies there. But probably the biggest thing is the importance of Mary.
Yeah.
I really didn't have an understanding of Mary prior to the Catholic Church. It was more kind of a cliff note on everything that was going on. So I think learning, or starting to learn, and then also the importance of saints,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea how many saints there were, and how you can connect with multiple saints, or even dive into one. So I think those are probably the two biggest differences. I think that
And we
I
spent
observed.
a lot of time talking about your developing understanding of the Eucharist,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what that means to
Yeah.
Catholics versus
Yeah.
versus Lutherans, and it was a big difference, and so we definitely had some conversations about what that means during.
And that's something that we did before I even decided to become Catholic.
Okay.
I guess that's probably why it's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, we were very early on when I'd come to Mass. I would take the Eucharist, not understanding the importance or what's going on at that point. But once you and I talked about it, there was many years that went by that I wouldn't, because out of respect and not believing or fully understanding what was going on. So So yeah, I think that yeah, you're right. That's the other big purpose, or the other big difference, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Were there any major hurdles in beliefs or differences of beliefs? Like Mary and Eucharist are usually two things people will comment on, saying those are just really hard for me to get over.
Yeah.
Were they hard for you to kind of enter into the faith, or were there other beliefs or other teachings that you had to work through?
I don't know. You might be a better source for that question. I don't think I had very many challenges. I think for me the biggest challenge was coming to terms with the fact that I'm in my early mid 30s, and having to make a life adjustment to basically come to terms with the fact that something that I thought I believed in for all those years was now different.
Yeah.
I think that was more the struggle for me, or because if you allow yourself to be a little vulnerable, you can come to terms with things that maybe you don't understand.
Yeah.
But it was really challenging to get past something that I had known to be true, and now known to be different.
Yeah.
So.
And we talked a lot about this idea, and my mom did not grow up Catholic and converted after a long time. I think I was in college. But it was one of those things where we started to have conversations, and you had the opportunity to talk with my mom as well, who had come from Lutheran and became Catholic and had gone through a very similar process. And we talked a lot about it. If you convert to Catholicism, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're saying that everything that happened before was wrong.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And it's taking that information and using it as part of your journey, and that's what we talked about. This is your journey to get where you are now and where you want to be in the future. It doesn't mean that the past is bad or not worthy of that journey. And so that was part of that conversation too, where we just had talked about it doesn't mean that what happened before was not right, or you believed the wrong thing for a long time. It was just different, and now you've evolved and grown and gained some new knowledge and different experiences, and this is where we're moving and going forward.
That's a really beautiful insight for all of us on our journey. I hear adults a lot say, "Oh, if only I would have known this," or "I wish I would have known that." And my response is always, "Oh, but don't belittle the process that got you to where you are, because there's so much growth that comes out of that. You might not have been ready for that information at an earlier time, but later was just the right time,
Yeah.
So, right, we always say in God's time, right?
Right.
Awesome. And well, thank you for sharing your story with us, and you just being vulnerable and opening up about how God has brought you to where you are today. We're very excited and lucky to have you as a family at St. Francis. I have one last question for you. How do you take your pizza?
Well, I think we're a thin crust family.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thin crust and
fewer carbs.
All veggie, any protein, or
oh yeah, a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
We have young children, so right now it's been a lot of cheese pizza lately. But we prefer to get pretty experimental with our pizza toppings. We're pretty open to anything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and we look forward to continuing to see you around our parish.
Thank you.
Yeah.